Hello, this is Nancy Fong from NYF Wealth Management. Welcome to my podcast, What If? Last episode, we were talking about skipping a generation in estate planning. So instead of giving to my kids, giving to my grandkids. So I'm going to introduce Ginny O'Leary, who is my co-host, and she's going to tell us what today's topic will be.
Well, hello everybody, and today's topic is what if you want your family business to make it? So for all of you listening, did you know that 63% of businesses across Canada are family owned? And some of you who are listening might be in those family owned businesses, but I was certainly a little bit surprised that 63% of the businesses are family owned. And did you realize that the other statistic I found out was that means these businesses make up 49% of Canada's GDP. That's quite powerful. So, Nancy, I'm gonna have you lead us off into this episode because I know you have exciting things to share about this.
So family business, a lot of my clients say, well, I don't own a business. It can be an active business, but actually, if you own a bunch of rental properties, that's a family business, right? Because you're taking the income and you're, bringing up your family with that income. And I want to just let people know that even though 63% of businesses in Canada are family businesses, only 1/3 of those businesses will make it to the second generation. And even harder is 10% of that 1/3%, which is 3%, survive to the third generation, to the grandkids. So before we skip a generation, Ginny, let's talk about the second generation.
Yeah.
So I'd like to paint a scene for you. And we have the eldest son in this family of mom, dad, and 6 kids. And I'm going to put it into a fairy tale because recently I was watching a Chinese drama called A New Life Begins. And A New Life Begins is talking about a king and a queen who have 2 daughters, 2 princesses, and 4 sons, 4 princes. So in this kingdom, the tradition is that the eldest son is going to take over. The eldest son is going to be the king when the king passes. And our problem is this successor always welcome? And Ginny, in February, in the Family Enterprise Canada, there will be a speaker, Patty Durand, who has written a book called The Future Leader, The Successor's Guide to Family Business Leadership, where she looks at the dynamics of succession planning and explore the challenges, opportunities, and the realities that nobody actually discusses of passing the baton. So when I was watching this drama, my little fun time, I didn't expect that I was going to learn something for my family enterprise studies. And it was that in this story, the first eldest 2 children were daughters. So they were not going to become king. In the Chinese, and I think also the Chinese Filipino tradition, the reason why sons succeed is that the family name passes among the male line. Females, if they will most likely, at that time in the old days, marry. So they will become Mrs. So-and-so. So they would marry other princes and become the queen of that kingdom. So the eldest son, which is the 3rd child, is the heir. However, as we all know, Ginny, the first is not always the best.
Yeah, I think the fact that you're actually sharing this is probably a topic when it comes to, the eldest son. Not many advisors certainly in our world will ever bring that up. But
Or be so bold about it.
be so bold and open. But I think it's really important, because when we think about this is tradition, and this is the what was passed on by the generations before. Okay, you can honor tradition, but also honor tradition in a way that adapts to what the reality of the stage of the business is in relation to all the different siblings and those who are involved and those who aren't involved. And it's not necessarily the right strategy
Yes.
In a current in the current stage of the business. So
Yes.
I'd love for you to continue to share.
Yes. So I've worked with a number of family businesses, and let's just use this king and queen as an example. Oftentimes, they do pick the eldest because if something happens to me, then the eldest is at least an adult and the younger ones are minors. So that is common sense. Like, it makes sense. However, are you overlooking the best candidate? So this king and queen, by the time he's, thinking of, making it the prince who is the heir. So in Chinese, there's actually a term called Taizi, and he's the prince that will be the inheritor. So he gets a special title. And so the king, when he's younger, he doesn't want to appoint one because it says he's going to die. But, he's getting on into his 60s and 70s. And then now his sons are adults and married, and he's starting to have grandkids. And so he is going to pick one of these as the heir prince. And so in this story, in this drama, he picks number 2. But number 2, or number 3, who is the third prince, but he's the eldest son, number 3 has this mentality that his dad is never happy with him. And so that happens as an eldest child, is that the demands on you and the expectations are very, very high, right? So this prince goes through his life thinking, because he's the heir, he needs to please his father. So he does everything to please his father. Marries a woman he doesn't love because she's the princess of the neighboring country, is really rich, and, trying to have a boy so that he would ensure his inheritance. And then he has all these concubines, but they keep having girls until, he's doing all these things trying to please his father, and he actually is very political with his younger brothers. A couple who follow him, he's very nice to, but the ones who don't follow him or, kind of want to do their own thing because some of the things he's doing is not right, like corruption, then then he's very vindictive against. Right? And he actually does bad things to them, tries to kill them and all these things. And so the king, in one point, actually, after something terrible happens to one of his other younger sons, thought to himself and says, have I picked the right successor? I mean, right in this drama I was hearing, is this the successor that's welcome? Because he knows the character of his third son is weak. The character was not strong enough to be a good king. As I was riveted by this story, by the way, everybody is hanging on to her every word here. I do want to say that's everything that you just said right now. I wonder how many, I would say, of that previous generation, so which is in this story, the king's generation, and in this situation, the king, how many even have that awareness, Yes.
to discern and say, hold on,
Yes.
could I have made the wrong decision
Yes.
in choosing the successor.
Yes.
Because now it's really playing out. It's costing,
Yes.
cost the life of one of my children.
Yes.
To have who I thought traditionally should be the successor
Yes.
move on with the kingdom.
Yes.
And that's powerful because, and Nancy, I would love for you to, continue on, but also at some point in this podcast to share, I think that's another place where when you have a trusted advisor, that is somebody you can trust to say, really,
Why? What are the
yeah.
pros and cons? What's worrying you? Why do you think it's not the right person? Who might be the right person?
Exactly.
And so it's really hard to discuss that with your spouse because we all have favorites. We don't say we have favorites, but we always connect with, one or two children perhaps better than the others. And if we talk about it to our children, that's just totally out of the question. The conflict of interest there is just, you're just going to make everyone more miserable. And so a trusted advisor is a third party. They're not going to inherit. They're not in your family. They see so many situations that they can maybe give you some guidance, ask you some questions. They're not going to give you the answer, but they're going to ask you the right questions. And so why do some businesses succeed in their succession? So I'm going to introduce you to another book. And at the end of my podcast, I will give you guys the links for the Cantonese drama, A New Life Begins, to Dr. Patty Duran's book, and now is Dr. Thomas Deans. He's a Canadian, but he is on the New York Times bestseller list, having written 3 books. The first one is Every Family's Business. And what I found is that he was actually 3rd generation in his family's business. And how did that happen? That's 3%. It was because every year he and his father would sit down and ask themselves 12 common sense questions to protect their wealth. And these 12 questions you can do with your family or yourself. And it was the grandfather who did it with the father, and now the father is doing it with Dr. Deans. And some of the questions are, do you want to inherit? So what if the king wanted his 3rd son, number 1 son, to inherit, and the son actually just wanted to go and paint? He didn't have the temperament to manage the family. And it was number 6 brother who had sword fight, he had good martial arts, but he was also a good reader and had the scholarship because he could take all the exams, and he would have been the one. Or even, in the old days, the daughters never got to choose. And in the story, in this drama, one of the other kingdoms, the daughter was married off to number 5 prince, but she was so smart. Like, she could do everything. And so after everything settled down in this kingdom, the number 5 prince encouraged her to go home and tell her dad, this is what I want. Because her younger brother was actually just couldn't handle anything. And even the dad was like, I'm so frustrated. He's just so useless. But he never thought that the daughter, number 1, would want to. And back then, women didn't come out to the public. Like, there were no courtiers that were women. Women stayed behind as wives and princesses and, daughters. And so in that side story, she ends up being a court official because she proved to her father how she could actually manage. So, these are just amazing stories of how you can pass the baton and pass the baton to a successor who wants it and is the right thing. So I think the life lesson in our podcast today is that communicate, don't guess, right? Parents, communicate, don't guess. Talk about things. And heirs, 2nd generations, instead of relying on parents, learn how to be prepared. And so our next episode, we'll go back to skipping a generation. Can grandparents help grandchildren be prepared? And can children learn that the responsibility given to them is not just extended to themselves, but also to the generation after them? So thank you for listening to our podcast today, NYF Wealth Management What If. See you next time.